Shabbat Shalom. I want to share a few thoughts on this week's Parashat Shemot, beginning, as I have in the past, with something that I found in the Chumash of the Rav from Rav Soloveitchik, but then taking things in my own direction, relying, though, of course, on things I've picked up, particularly for the Rambam over the years. I want to start with the well-known, the pasuk, the story where Moshe, after being raised in the Paro's royal household, goes out and sees the Jewish people working as slaves and being beaten as slaves, and he sees an Egyptian beating a Jew, and he looks, and there's no one around to see, no one around to help, and he kills the Egyptian. Sometime afterwards, he sees two Jews fighting, and he tries to, he tells the evil one, the man who started the fight, why are you hitting your friend? And the man says, "Halarageni Omer Klomar, are you going to, kill me like you killed the Egyptian?" And Moshe, who had thought that, his act had been kept secret, said, "Achein noda davar," and this led him to, flee from Egypt and go to Midian. The pshat, the simple, plain explanation of Achein noda davar is that, the matter is known now. Moshe had thought that no one knew that he had killed this Egyptian. Now he sees that the matter is that the incident is known and people know about it, and he thinks that he better run for his life. But the Rav Soloveitchik has a very interesting, different reading of Achein noda davar. Moshe Rabbeinu was troubled. What had the Jewish people done to deserve the slavery? Even if there was a prophecy that they would have to spend some time in exile and so on, but this sort of degradation and physical suffering, it can't be, it must be a cause for it. You can't have this sort of, hardship imposed on them without some justification. They must have done something wrong. And when he heard this man say or hint, bluntly, that he was going to tell the Egyptian authorities about him, he understood that this is that a people who can produce evil people like that, who will, go and tell the authorities, moistrim, as he used to call them, people who would turn state's evidence for whatever minor pleasures they got in return. That explains why they would be in such desperate circumstances. All the more so, since the Midrash tells us that this person who threatened to go and tell on Moshe to the authorities was the very person he had saved from the Egyptian when he hit that, smote that Egyptian who was striking a Jew. So Moshe said, "Achein noda davar." Now I understand. Now I understand why the Jewish people deserve this sort of, hardship. And he left for Egypt. He left for Midian. And when he came to Midian, the Benot Yitro identified him as Ish Mitzri. He didn't, he acted and walked like an Egyptian, talked like an Egyptian. He wasn't trying to, having left the country to resume a full Jewish identity. And also when he came there, the pasuk says twice in the same pasuk, Vayeshev. Vayeshev beretz Midian, Vayeshev ala be'er. This repetition of Vayeshev twice in the second part of one pasuk indicates that he intended Lit Yashev. He intended simply, to settle and begin a new life in Midian. He was totally fed up with his own people after seeing, what they would do to the person who would say, what the the very person that he had saved was going to go tell on him to the authorities and get him in a whole heap of trouble, as they say. But then two incidents happen. The time goes on, and two incidents come in wonderful synchronicity. Moshe, two things happen. First, the Pharaoh dies and a new king arises in Egypt. And in a very short but powerful passage, Torah describes this. And it says that Vayanchu b'nei Asher ben avodah vayizaku. The Jews until then had not even prayed. They had not cried out for redemption because they had become accustomed to the slave mentality. And the Rav here makes an important distinction between pain and suffering. Pain is simply a reaction into the nerve when it's stimulated by the whip of the Egyptian or a bite of an animal. And animals and humans share pain equally. It's the same mechanism. But suffering is a matter of consciousness. If you accept being a slave, if you know nothing of any other type of life other than being a slave, if you're simply, fully accepting the fact that people are treating you like dirt, then you don't suffer. You may have pain when you have to work very, very hard or when you get kicked around physically, but you don't suffer. Suffering is something that goes on in the consciousness when you realize that you are in a position that you should not be in, that you don't want to be in. And the Jews had not suffered until then. But now, the king had died, and they let out a sigh, Vayizaku. Vayizaku is not yet full prayer. It's not enunciated prayer in clear words with clear message. It's simply a cry, but it's not the cry of pain, it's the cry of suffering. So the Jews had begun to wake up, begun to realize that they were in a situation that they should not be, and they should want to, get out of it, not be slaves anymore. The very next chapter, the very next passage in the pasuk, in the chapter, in the parsha, Moshe haya ro'eh tzon yitro chotno v'yenhag et tzon achar hamidbar. Moshe became a shepherd. Now, there's a reason why so many of the Jewish leaders and prophets, Moshe Rabbeinu, David HaMelech, Amos, and others were shepherds, of course, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Because to reach the level of prophecy, one needs many, many hours of contemplation, all the more so if they're in solitude. You're by yourself, you have lots of time on your hands, and instead of wasting it fooling with your smartphone or whatever, you spend it contemplating, thinking, trying to connect intellectually, mentally, spiritually with one above. And that's something that a shepherd can do if the shepherd makes proper use of the time on his hands. So Moshe had also begun a movement away from his situation of wanting to be simply another, a run-of-the-mill, a good citizen of Midian. He was out in the desert thinking, recalling, and building again his connection to the one above. And this led him to his first prophecy, the prophecy of the burning bush, a low-level prophecy from Moshe Rabbeinu, because it took place with this image, let us call it, of a burning bush. Moshe Rabbeinu, as the Rambam tells us, one of the things that distinguishes his prophecy from others is that it's not with prophetic visions like Yechezkel or even Yeshayahu, but it's direct it's direct communication from God, a purely intellectual plane. But the first one, prophecy also, you start the lower on the ladder, then you can move up. Some move up, some don't. So he had his first prophecy, and this is the type of synchronicity where one really sees the divine intervention. Many people cry out for these tremendous visual miracles, like the splitting of the Red Sea, where it's a spectacles that make such a long-lasting impression. This is what the king of the Chazars wants in Halevi's Kuzari. He wants something like that, some type of tremendous manifest miracle that no one can deny. Even though then too, a lot of people say that it's a synchronicity, that there are sort of weather conditions, winds and the sort that can lead to a temporary land passage across the Red Sea. And again, what made it miraculous was the synchronicity. It may have been the meteorological event may have been natural, but that it took place exactly when the Jewish people were standing there with their backs to the sea and Pharaoh's army pressing in, that's miraculous. Here too, we have the synchronicity. Just as the Jewish people are beginning to awaken, beginning to suffer, meaning beginning to realize that there's something wrong with the idea with the fact that they are slaves, and beginning to long, even if it's a sort of amorphous longing, amorphous wish to improve their condition and be free from slavery. Just then, Moshe Rabbeinu was getting out of this idea of he was going to spend the rest of his life as a fine citizen of Midian, and was out in the desert improving, strengthening himself spiritually, and eventually leading to the prophetic revelation. And this is how the story of the Gula began. Thank you very much, and Shabbat Shalom.